Hi team. Let me just take my seatbelt off and turn the car off, because obviously I was still wearing my seatbelt and had the car engine running whilst I was setting up the camera. Today I'd like to talk about the painful residues of the past. Why it's so difficult to move on, why it's so difficult to let go, why it's so difficult to forgive and forget, and why it can be so challenging, demoralizing, and frustrating when we're trying to heal from previous experiences, previous events, previous relationships, past hurts. I'd like to speak on why it's so difficult. What's the actual mechanism here that makes it so challenging to just let go? After all, that's what we're taught, right? Just let go. Just let go. Oh, you're still carrying that around? You're still holding on to that grudge? Nah, just let it go. Like it's that easy. So it goes and so it goes, and the book says we may be done with the past, but the past isn't always done with us. It's a quote from the film Magnolia. I highly recommend you check it out. It is hard to let go of a past that is holding on to you. You might want to let go. Yeah, I'm letting go. But the past's still holding on. It doesn't matter how much I'm letting go, the past is holding on. How can I let go of this thing? I'd like to speak about why that happens. What's the mechanism here? And then with that newer understanding, with that deeper perspective, that deeper insight, we can begin to shift into a position, an elevated position of pure conscious awareness. We can shift into a space of true healing, true peace, where the hurts and pains of the past are integrated into the wholeness of being. That we at once recognize that this has happened. We accept the pain of the past. This did happen. Bringing it into the being, accepting, allowing, and loving the innermost parts of ourselves that were so wounded, so hurt, whilst having the grace and dignity to understand why other people did what they did, and perhaps in time come to a place of forgiveness. But that will happen by grace in time, in its own time, in your own time. It's not something we can force. That's something I'd really like to speak on today. In time, that will come. But first, let's heal those innermost, deeper parts of ourselves that were so brutally hurt, wounded. Now, there are two primary aspects of a painful history. The two general areas, and within those two general areas there are many facets and aspects and nuances, but the two general ones are trying to heal from our own past transgressions, our own past misdeeds, our own past terrible behaviors, and we've all got them, right? We've all got them. So the emotions surrounding those are things like guilt, shame, regret, resentment, self-hate, those kind of very deep, dark, I mean, they're nasty ones, right? We repress a lot of those, repressed, buried, because they are incredibly painful. So that's one area. And then the other area is when the world or other people have been unfair in their treatment towards you. Perhaps they have hurt you, abused you, mistreated you. There are an almost infinite number of ways that this can manifest, but those are the two general broad categories. And because each one is so massive, I'm going to do a separate video on each of them, because they do require a similar but slightly different resolution. They require slightly different perspectives, although there are similarities between the two. So I'm going to do two videos on this particular subject, and the one I'm going to focus on today is the one, the memories of the past, the previous experiences of other people hurting you, or the world treating you unfairly, previous situations in which you have been the victim of something. One of the things that really bugs me, don't know where this has just come from, I wasn't planning on talking about it today, but that, you ever hear that, like, don't be a victim? Yeah, you're just being a victim. But it's like, well, hang on. If a crime's been committed against me, then I am a victim. And it doesn't even have to be a crime. If I have been abused, then I am the victim of that. I can't just decide to not be a victim. I can understand that we don't want to remain within that mentality, because then we stay stuck in the identification with that mentality, sure. But you can't just tell me not to be a victim. I don't know. That one's just always bugged me. Has it bugged anyone else? So, this is quite symbolic. I just took my watch off. Goodbye to the past. In this symbolic gesture, it's only ever the present moment. We don't need watches anymore. That's another thing that we're going to have to resolve. If it's only ever the present moment, which I say often, did the past happen? Isn't this just now, well, there is no such thing as the past, so therefore it's not a problem. We don't have to do any of this stuff. Well, there is a nuance there, I'm afraid. The best way that I can describe and reconcile that is if you imagine a footprint in the sand. Somebody has been walking through the sand next to the shoreline and stepping on the sand. It leaves a footprint behind. Now the foot's no longer there. The foot's no longer there, but the footprint does remain in the sand. The footprint is not the foot, it's a footprint. And that is the pain of previous experiences. It's an imprint, something that has been left behind. Something that has been left behind by the fact something happened. There was something that happened, and it's left its residue behind. Now, that footprint will dissolve, it will smooth over, it will diminish, but it's going to require repeated washing over of the waves and the gentle breeze of the wind that just gently moves that sand until it's back to being smooth. A blank canvas. That's exactly how it works. So the past works like that. Something happened. We cannot doubt that these experiences happen. Yes, ultimately, the pure truth is that it's only ever the present moment. Let's do this as an experiment now. At what point does this moment now become a previous event? This moment right now. At what moment does the present become the past? Just take some time to just check this now. It never happens. It just never happens. So where is this thing called the past? It's simply not there. And yet, on a very deep fundamental level, there is something that resists this, that objects to this. And that thing that is resisting this is the wounded part of yourself that has been subject to terrible mistreatment. There could be awful, awful things that have happened to you. Awful. Total injustice. And I won't go, I will say there will have to be some kind of trigger warning here, because we're going to be going into some deep, dark waters now. This is the territory of the injustices that have been committed against you. And so upon hearing, well, it's only ever the present moment, and practicing these principles, we find a lot of peace from, okay, so the past is not a real, solid, tangible place that I could go back to. That helps us to relieve ourselves of a huge burden, because we often keep going back to, well, what if I'd done something else? What if I'd done something differently? What if only I'd said this, if only I'd said that, if only I'd done this? Well, hindsight is 20/20 vision, right? You know, we always know the perfect solution in hindsight. At the time, you weren't aware of what was happening. So this idea of looking back and saying, well, it's the, you know, if I'd have just done something differently, this wouldn't have happened. Well, it's only ever now. Okay, so we can drop the cognitive element of the past. We can drop the images, we can drop the narratives, we can drop the story, and let's deal with what is left. Let's deal with the residue. Let's deal with the footprint in the sand, because that is what we're dealing with. Whenever we have these painful memories arise, we often think the painful memory has arisen and that's triggered a horrible feeling inside. It's actually the other way around. The horrible feeling is there first, and it's when the mind has become aware of that horrible feeling, that's when it triggers these old memories resurfacing. So, knowing that, we can begin to shift the solution to, well, what if I deal with the residues of the past now? And this is how we reconcile this thing about, if it's only ever the present moment, how do we heal from the past if the past doesn't exist? How are we going to do that? Well, this is the answer. If we recognize the residues of the past continue to exist in the body, but they continue to exist in the body now. They didn't happen back then, because there is no back then. There is only now. So in this moment now, we can deal with that residual pain, that residual hurt, that residual trauma that is lodged and stored in the body. We're not going to fix it on a cognitive level. Why? Because there is no past to return to. No amount of perfect solutions to what you should have done will heal the past. No amount of thinking, if only I'd have done this better, will heal the past. It will just continue to run and run. There will be an infinite number of stories going on in the mind, and this is the psychological turmoil, the suffering that assaults you occasionally. It can be debilitating, I really mean it. On a daily basis, you suddenly, I remember that horrible thing that person did to me. Why did they do that to me? I should have done this. I should have done that. In future, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No amount of that cognitive processing will bring you any closer to inner peace. That's just a habit. It's a bad habit that we get into in our mind. So here's something else we can do. Here is something else. Try something different, because that habit doesn't work. Lord knows it doesn't work. I'm sure you've experienced it yourself and can attest to the fact it does not work. Rehashing old memories is not the solution. So here is what we can do. Upon recognizing, there's that old pain again. And yes, it may be triggered by a memory. So the memory might come up where you remember that person said that thing, did that thing, acted towards me in a horrible way, and you're tempted to engage in all of those memories. That's where you're tempted to go, because that's what the habit is pulling you into. If only I should have said this, I should have said that, I'm going to get revenge. That's another one. Revenge fantasies aren't going to help us either. Revenge fantasies aren't going to help us, team. They're really not. They're really not. Vengeance won't bring you any solace. It won't. It won't. That's just the truth. I wish it did, because life would be a lot more simple then, wouldn't it? But vengeance, it doesn't bring us any closer to health. It doesn't bring us any closer to wholeness or inner peace. Revenge is not the solution. It's not. And on that, sorry, I know I keep going off on tangents here, but on that one, you don't need to get revenge. You don't need to. So you can let yourself go of that burden. Why? Because unconscious people, unconscious beings, the narcissists, the liars, the criminals, the demons, they are already living in hell. There is nothing you could do to them that is worse than their ordinary everyday lives. They already live in hell. Unconscious beings cut off from the source of consciousness, cut off from the universe, cut off from the light and love of God. They are already living in hell. That is how they acted in such an unconscious way towards you in the first place. Anyone who is the slightest bit conscious and compassionate cannot treat other people in ways that are abusive, inconsiderate, unkind, aggressive, violent, and traumatic. They can't do it. So if somebody has acted in that way towards you, I guarantee it's because they are an unconscious individual, and you don't need to get any revenge on them because they are already suffering so intensely that they're not even aware that they are suffering. So let that be. You don't need to get revenge. So the cognition goes up into those revenge fantasies. We don't need to do any of that. They leave them well alone. They are suffering plenty, right? And this is kind of the way it works. They will pay the price ultimately, and it will have nothing to do with you. You might not even ever become aware or conscious of the fate that befell them, and you don't need to know either. Just leave them well alone, right? Leave it to God. Trust, trust, trust. The resolution will happen. They get what's coming to them. They always do. But it's got nothing to do with you. If you take that revenge, if you take that vengeance, you're the one who will suffer. And they will continue to win. They win, right? If you're suffering all up in your cognition, going through those revenge fantasies and saying, I should have said this, I should have said that, I should have done this. All that's happening there is you're continuing to feed that person your energy. Right? You're continuing by continually thinking about that event, those people, that situation, whatever it is that happened. If you think about them, you're still giving them energy. We take a different approach. Go inwards. Go inwards and accept. Accept. The pain is here. Those previous events did happen. So presence is often misunderstood, misused, misrepresented. If we come into total presence, it is not an exclusion of your emotions. It's not an exclusion of your feelings. It's an inclusion. But the difference is you are becoming purely focused and aware of the reality of what it is now. The emotion as it is now. And if we are dealing with the deep, dark hurts that are related to the injustice that we have been subjected to, then we're likely to be dealing with things like rage. There can still be shame and guilt in there as well. Anger, hatred, resentment is a big one, and resentment is incredibly poisonous. You got to understand just how poisonous resentment is. People often say that the opposite of love is hatred. It's not. The opposite of love is resentment. And love is the most powerful, beautiful energy in existence. So its polar opposite, resentment, is the worst, the most damaging, the most toxic of all emotions. But if it's there, it's there. We have to practice self-honesty. It is crucial in healing and spirituality to develop an uncompromising self-honesty. We have to be truly, truly honest with ourselves and open ourselves up to bear the painful truth. I would rather bear the pain of truth than suffer the damage of delusion. And if I delude myself into thinking everything's absolutely fine, I'm no longer carrying around the pain of the past, I'm all present and wonderful, if I'm doing that, I am deluding myself. It's much better to apply that presence in the correct manner, the healthy manner, and say, I accept that those previous events did happen. Yes, that person, those people, that situation hurt me. Choosing to accept that. Bringing it in to, right, that's what I'm dealing with. There is a wound there. There is pain there. Awareness is key. Healing cannot happen without awareness, in the same way that the immune system cannot deal with a sickness or a disease if the immune system can't see it. The most dangerous and deadly diseases, and parasites, by the way, are the ones that can hide themselves from the immune system. Right? So in the same way, our repressed emotions find a way to hide themselves from the light of consciousness. Why? Because when the light of consciousness is turned upon them, it will heal them. It heals them automatically. So what do I mean by the light of consciousness? Here, I mean, become aware of those deep, dark, residual emotions that reside within you in the present moment. Don't go up into the mind. Memories is actually a way of avoiding the feeling. If we go up into that angry revenge fantasy, we can avoid the painful truth of acknowledging, I am hurting. And boy, does it hurt. Youch. Youch, youch, youch. Now, we might be looking at things such as somebody might have cheated on you. Maybe you were in a relationship and you were married to somebody for 10 years. And then all of a sudden you find out they've been cheating on you. And the last year of the marriage was just awful. You became aware. You became aware of these very deep, dark, negative, toxic behaviors that previously you weren't aware of, but they had been happening all along. You just weren't aware of them. All of a sudden, something started sparking up in your awareness and, oh, hang on a minute, something's not right here. It happens all the time. All the time. This marriage isn't what I thought it was. This person isn't who I thought they were. And they've cheated on me. This isn't me, by the way. I know I sound like a disgruntled ex sometimes. I've never been married. I'm not married now. This is just an example. You find out this person cheated on you. Now you're infuriated. You're filled with rage. And so there's a breakup and a divorce happens. And we're tempted to stay in rage because rage and anger is a slightly more comfortable, it's not very comfortable at all, but it's a slightly more comfortable emotional position to reside in than actually facing the truth, the reality of the situation, which is you're heartbroken. You're heartbroken. This person hurt you. You thought this was love. And all this time it's not been that. And now they betray you. And they've been lying. And they have completely undermined your trust. That's heartbreaking. Your heart has been broken. You are hurt. A very innocent, hopeful part of yourself has been betrayed, hurt. And that hurt is excruciatingly, emotionally agonizing. We have to just be honest here. It's so easy to say, oh, it doesn't bother me. Oh, that person, wow, what a dickhead that person was. I don't care. They're all like it. That's them. I don't mind. I'm happy now because now I'm free. Now I'm free of all of that. And I hate them, but I've moved on. That's a stance a lot of people take to that kind of thing. But you can just tell. You can feel that there is something not resolved there. We need to move on from these situations in a healthy manner. Healthy manner. And there are many situations like it. There are almost infinite. That's just one example, and actually we might say that's quite a one of the more common, sadly, and surface level hurts, injustices that happen. There are so many far, far worse. I sympathise with you, because some of them are so deep, so dark, they're unspeakable, the ways people treat each other. We have to accept that we were hurt. So one of my ones, and you'll have to forgive me here because I always get triggered talking about it. Let's see if you can notice the moment it happens. But my father, when I was trying to sober up, and if you know me and know my story, I've had a transformation, recovering from obesity, anxiety, depression, and addiction, and it took years of intense, hard work on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. It was a grind. And during that time, I became aware that my father was intentionally sabotaging my attempt to get sober. I recognized that actually this isn't the loving, happy, cheerful person I thought he was. He's insane. He's nasty, he's manipulative, he's sneaky, he's a liar, he's underhanded, and he is intentionally partaking of a sustained campaign to sabotage my recovery. And I came to this awareness gradually, and I've continually checked it out. Like, am I just being paranoid here? This can't be. But the more I've looked at it, and no, that the writing is on the wall. There is something very, very wrong here. Very wrong. And if you've recovered from any kind of addiction or mental health problem, you know how tough it is, you know how fragile you are, you know how vulnerable you are, and you know how much you need some support. And you would think that your parents' support is kind of like a given, right? Well, not in this case. He repeatedly abused me. Right. Now, the feelings that result from that are pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. And for a long time I was stuck in rage. Just rage. But this is what I want to talk about, is so how do we come to inner peace, lasting inner peace, when we still have, we are still acknowledging this pain, the painful residues of this past. So I wanted to give that example there to show that I understand what it feels like to have this baffling, confusing, strange period of time in which things just weren't the way you thought they were, and to be hurt intentionally by somebody who is supposed to be the exact opposite of that, right? So for a long time, I was stuck in rage, and I recognized that this rage was not healthy. It would come out of nowhere. I'd just be trying to get on with my life, and all of a sudden there'd just be this huge swell, I'd just be sat at work trying to get on with my work in the gym. Right, I was working in a gym at the time, and my life, it was a happy life. I'd managed to recover from all of that, the obesity, anxiety, depression, addiction, trying to get my life into some semblance of health and happiness, productivity. And I'd be trying to get on with things, and then all of a sudden there's just this huge swell of rage. And I mean, I would get double vision, my eyes would blur, my hands would shake, I would sweat. I'd have to go and take myself into a different room. I'd have to make an excuse, say I need to go to the loo or something like that. And I would have memories of these awful things that he would say and he would do in his attempt to undermine my recovery, and was still continuing to do so. I was still in contact with him at the time, so sometimes you'd get a text message through or something and it'd just be like, what is going on? I'd be infuriated and filled with rage. And then I came to that recognition of this pain is not healthy. There's something that needs to be healed here. Now, the most common advice we get on stuff like this is, well, you need to forgive. You need to just forgive and forget, right? Don't hold on to a grudge. You need to forgive. And obviously I set about trying to do that. Now, you hear it a lot, actually, in spiritual terms. You hear this often. And as a spiritual dude, I've set myself up as a spiritual dude who's in a spiritual mood, it would be in my best interest to say, yes, so what I did was I just learned to forgive, and we must forgive all beings, and we must practice, we must take the example of Christ and do the full forgiveness of everything, and nothing bothers me. And everyone would go, ah, yes, very, very good, like, yes, that's what we all must do, is just go to forgiveness. But self-honesty is key. Honesty. We have to be truly honest with ourselves and say, well, hang on a minute, actually, I don't forgive that. We have to be authentic to ourselves. We cannot keep betraying ourselves. We have to be honest with where we're at, and that's all right. We're not perfect, okay? In an ideal world, sure, it's just walking around in a cloud of forgiveness and grace, sure, but well, we're flawed, we're human beings, right? So if I'm truly honest with myself, no, that forgiveness is not there. And sometimes we just have to come to that. We might have in our heads gone, yes, I forgive it, but in our hearts, no, it's not forgiven. I don't forgive that. That was a transgression against me that it is not in my power to forgive. So this is what I wanted to say today, is that don't be pressurized into forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that will happen naturally, in its own course, in its own time, by practicing healing, compassion towards yourself, by learning, understanding, growing, moving on, taking accountability for the things that you've done, and learning and understanding why other people behave in the way that they behave. By going through that process of just practical, reasonable, rational health and healing, at some point, some understandings will come bubbling up to the surface, and a natural forgiveness in time will arise. But all too often, we come to, because there is the pain of the rage, the pain of the painful memories, the repeated resurfacing of this dark, old residual trauma that all comes bubbling to the surface, we desperately, desperately want that pain to be gone. We want to get rid of that pain. It's infuriating because you're just trying to move on with your life, and yet these deep, dark things are continually pulling you back. And because you're seeking relief from this pain, and you hear from so many different people, even spiritual people and especially religious people, the only advice that they can give is, well, you just need to forgive them. And then that will get rid of all that pain, all that problem. But if you're truly honest with yourself, it's not as simple as that. Of course it's not. That's far too simple. It's far too easy an answer. It's an easy answer given by people who don't want to put the work into meeting you where you are, to meet the reality of your situation. While we're at it, Charles Bukowski said, the people who preach forgiveness need forgiveness. And I've found that very, very true. Very true. The people who are absolutely adamant that you need to forgive, you must forgive. You are the one. This, again, it's persecutory, isn't it? It puts it back on you. It puts it back on you. You're the one who needs to forgive. You're the problem. You're the one who is holding on to this grudge. What? No. The people who are absolutely adamant about this forgiveness are the people with the guiltiest conscience. You need to forgive. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? Often you will hear it's the perpetrators of the abuse. It's the perpetrators of the mistreatment that are the ones who are the most adamant that you must forgive. That's convenient, isn't it? It's really convenient, because then that means you can just behave however you want to behave and everyone just has to forgive you all the time. Well, that's quite a nice little arrangement for you, isn't it? It's so obvious. It's so transparent when you see it. And this is the benefit of increased consciousness. This is the benefit of awakening to pure awareness, is you see through people's lies. You see right through them. You see right through their little egos, their little stories, their little narratives. It becomes so transparent. So transparent. So recognize that you're in a rush, you're in a hurry to forgive because you want that pain to be gone. But understanding that's the mechanism that's happening under there, is that you're trying to forgive something that is perhaps currently unforgivable. You've been told by everyone, even spiritual and religious people, that the solution is to forgive. You might even be told this by therapists: you must forgive, you must forgive, you are the problem, you're the one who needs to forgive. Give me a break, right? And, because you're hearing that from so many sources and you're desperate for the pain to end, you're trying to sort of, again, it's like trying to take the kingdom of heaven by force. You can't force forgiveness. You can't. Forgiveness is a beautiful thing, by the way. I'm not against forgiveness. Forgiveness is fantastic. But it's something that will happen naturally. And it can only happen naturally once the wound has been healed. So forget forgiveness. Just forget that for now. If it happens, it happens. That's great. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That's not actually all that important. What's important is that you heal the hurt. You heal from the transgression. Now, when I came to this, so that's why I went through that kind of emotional story of kind of one of the major hurts that I struggled to resolve and reconcile and let go of, which I have subsequently now found a mechanism to be at peace with all of that. And I'm going to explain how and why. So we would just forget the forgiveness thing, because that's not the solution. Thankfully. One second, let's just have a little celebrate here with a Barista Coffee Co. Caramel Latte. Yum. This is not product placement. I just like to have a little drink break in the middle of my videos so that I can whet my whistle, so to speak. Give me a little break from all this heaviness, because good grief, it gets heavy. This is some heavy subject material we're talking about here. And by the way, what do I owe you for this therapy session? It's the best therapy ever. I'm getting it for free here. I'm asking people to join my channel memberships, available at the bottom. I should be the one paying you. Thanks for listening, team. Thank you. I really appreciate this. I do. I really appreciate the fact that I can speak like this and people receive it and say, that's great. I can relate to this. I can relate to what you're saying. I appreciate the people who challenge what I'm saying. I get it. It's all good. It's great to have this discussion. So thank you. Cheers. Let's celebrate with non-product placement Barista Coffee Co. Caramel Latte. Has your get up and go got up and gone? Well, it sure has, Barista Coffee Co. Treat yourself to this delicious iced coffee drink. Well, that sounds lovely. And put a bounce back in your step. Will do. Yum! Why did nobody tell me Barista Coffee Co. tastes so delicious? And for just £1? The choice is obvious. Sorry. Oh, I just spat my drink out then. Right, let's get back to it. We're trying to heal from emotional trauma here, Corin. This is no time for jokes. So, forget the forgiveness thing. Just leave that for a moment, right? Even though the whole world is going to pressure you into forgiveness because they're invested in that, right? Instead, we're going to come in to heal the damage. And the way to do that is through this presence, through the presence of awareness, the elevated consciousness of being in which we are simply the pure awareness. In the here and now, the past cannot repeat itself. We are perfectly safe from the past. It is not going to come back around. The past is in the past. The past has passed, right? And now, through the waves of this peace, this conscious awareness, we are washing over that footprint in the sand so that we can end up with that beautiful, expansive, vast, open, blank slate. A pure, clear canvas to rebuild our lives upon. Okay? So, we do that through, drop the forgiveness, instead through the pure light of consciousness, go to, how does it feel now? Can we flush out where these deep, dark residues of pain are residing within the body? And just this is the first step. There are two steps here that I want to coach today. The first step is acceptance. But we are not accepting that the events that happened were all fine, right? You've had enough of that. You've had enough of that. That if you're anything like me, you were conditioned into being the sort of person who's just fine with whatever. I don't mind how people treat me. I don't mind what people say to me. I don't mind everyone's acting in horrible, terrible ways. That's fine because I don't mind. I'm just that sort of person who doesn't mind. You've probably been conditioned to be that sort of person. And we've had enough of that. So when I say acceptance, don't allow your ego to hijack that. Right? Don't allow your ego to appropriate that and go back into its comfortable pattern of, oh, I just accept everything that happened. That's just, it is what it is. People just are that way. No. Their behavior was unacceptable. And nobody can ask you to accept unacceptable behavior. Man, but people do that all the time, don't they? They're trying to get you to accept the unacceptable. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I've had enough of that. I used to do that way too much and it damaged the hell out of me. I was messed up. What we have to accept is that it was unacceptable. I accept that people behaved in unacceptable ways towards me, and I accept that I didn't really stop it. Now I can say, because I didn't know any better, that I was too weak at the time. I'm just going to accept that. I was too weak. I was too weak to challenge things at the time. I didn't have the knowledge I needed at the time. to challenge certain behaviours. Now, I would challenge things immediately. Utterly unacceptable. Yes, it is unacceptable to throw my running trainers in the bin. Yes, it is. Yes, it's unacceptable. I accept that it's unacceptable that you would eat my lunch out of the fridge that I'd prepared specially, chicken, broccoli and rice for my fitness goals because I'm recovering from obesity. It is unacceptable you would eat that. It's unacceptable that you would pour a lot of red wine into the bolognese, right? When you know I am trying to get sober from alcohol. That is unacceptable behaviour, I'm afraid. I am not going to accept it. What we accept here, again, I'm using these as examples. I'm sure you have many, many of your own. What we're accepting is the pain, is what did happen. We cannot pretend the pain didn't happen. Now, in your case, in your example, it may be something else that you're dealing with here. I'm talking about a kind of a long, low-level, sustained campaign of emotional abuse, but you might have had something where it was just a singular event. A crime may have been committed against you, something like that. And, oof, it's rough, right? What we have to accept in that scenario is to accept that it did happen. We can't pretend it didn't happen. Just accept that it did happen. But we're not going to accept that it's fine that it happened. No, we need to accept that it's unacceptable that it happened. And what we accept is the pain. And we accept that we're going to have to do some healing. We don't want to do that because it's not fair. It's very difficult to do things that are not fair. It is really tough. And if you have suffered through no fault of your own, somebody has done this to you, it was not your fault, and now not only have you suffered the pain of what that person did to you, you also now need to suffer the pain of healing. That ain't fair. It's not. We need to accept that it's not fair and accept that we're going to have to do it anyway. We're just going to have to do it anyway. Why? Because the greatest victory, the greatest justice is going to be when you heal fully and get to the other side of this. That's the greatest victory on earth. And you're not having any more revenge fantasies. It doesn't get in the way of your everyday life. There might still be the residual every now and then. Just old something resurfaces, but you can deal with that now. And ultimately, this is the victory. You just gently, quietly, and healthily move on. And that person, that individual, that situation, they don't even exist anymore. It's done. It's over. That is the greatest victory of all. We achieve that through, firstly, that acceptance. That acceptance of, okay, so it did happen, and it's going to take some energy to heal from this. It might take time to heal from this. It might take money to heal from this. It will take my energy to heal from this. And I'm not going to try and package it up and frame it in a way where it's like, oh, and that it's all fine because I'll be stronger for it and all of that. That's all going into narratives. And I'm sorry, narratives don't help. Instead, we just got to do what we got to do. We got work to do. And it's not fair that you have this work to do. It's not. But you got to do it. I'm sorry. I am. When we get to that place of just that gentle calm, okay, right. Then, once we're in that healed position, we've fully accepted it, and now in the presence of awareness, when the pain arises, it's just integrated. It's just there. And in time, by accepting the pain, that is like the waves washing over the footprint in the sand. Eventually, the pain rises and it's barely even registered. It's just, okay, there's that again. And the animals I've trapped have all become my pets. A beautiful line in one of Nirvana's songs. The animals I've trapped have all become my pets. It's beautiful, because that's a little bit of kind of what's happened there. It's the The pain that previously was such a problem, it's now become your pet. It's just, it rises, it fusses, it struggles, it makes noise, and this is loved. This too, this too, this too. Okay, yes, I know. You can soothe. It's okay that something bad happened, something terrible happened, and now it's time to heal from that. To apply that loving compassion towards yourself. Through that acceptance, then coming into that place of peace, some kind of forgiveness may start coming through. And for me, to go back to the example of sort of my main hurt, of which there are many, but those animals I've trapped have all become my pets. But that main hurt, I was trying it to, right, so I just need to forgive him? But he's still acting like a maniac. He's being abusive to everyone. He's awful. He's horrible. This is a horrible man. I'm supposed to forgive him? So I was trying to enter the kingdom of heaven by force, right, I must forgive. And then that doubles down on our own sort of shame core, doesn't it? Because I'm trying to forgive, but I can't forgive, so there must be something wrong with me. I must be really sick. No, that's not the case. I was trying so hard to forgive, eventually just give up on that. I'm going to heal instead. Healed, and then, eventually, the insight arose. Hang on a minute. I think I understand this. The position I arrived at is that he's not very well. He's mentally ill. And this came through not as a cognitive thing, and it didn't come through as a, yes, I win. No, it didn't come through like that. It came through as quite a sad, somber recognition. He's got personality disorders. He's unwell. He's a very, very poorly man. So you might find in your situation, when you've done the inner work and the healing, that eventually a quiet intuition will visit you, and you will have the answer that you need. The answer of why. Why did this have to happen? Why do they act in this way? Why did they do that to me? I don't understand why. And for all of our turmoil in trying to figure it out cognitively doesn't work. Once you've healed those deep wounded inner parts of yourself, finally the intuition can come through that teaches you what you need to know about that situation. And it has to be like that, because the intuition and understanding will only rise up when it's safe to do so. If you have certain understandings too soon, it's not a safe time for it to happen. If I came to that recognition too soon, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I wouldn't have been able to behave in a way that is positive and conducive to everyone moving on from this situation. The understanding came when the understanding came. And on that basis, that recognition, that understanding, it doesn't make anything okay. It doesn't make the behaviour acceptable. But it does explain a lot. And when I came to that recognition, right, a huge chunk of that old pain just started to really get washed away by the wave there, which is what we're longing for. We're longing for that peace. I want to be free of this pain. It's not fair that somebody can hurt you and then keep hurting you even when they're no longer in your lives. It's not fair. So, on the healing, that first step is that acceptance, and through that healing then the understanding comes through. Then we move to that second step that I was talking about. We have to grieve. You have to grieve. And you might not want to. In fact, Lord knows you don't want to. And it might feel very paradoxical. So let's go back to the example of the individual who was married for 10 years. The last year of the marriage was just awful, and then it transpired that the partner was cheating on that individual. Let's use that one as the example. I'm sure you can take your situation and kind of slot that into what I'm talking about here. When that breakup happens and there's a lot of rage, there's a lot of anger, and it's a very chaotic time emotionally at that sort of time, because there's going to be the highest highs and the lowest lows. When you break free of that marriage, and if I looked at that, I would say that sounds like one of the individuals there may have some kind of narcissistic traits, may have been a very nasty individual actually. And on breaking free of that, there's like a euphoria for the person who broke free. It's like getting out of prison. But it's like, wow. But then it's also very big highs, very big lows, because you break free of that and there's the euphoria. But then you're also dealing with, wow, it's confusing. How did I not see that? How did I not see that sooner? Does that sound familiar? How many times do we go, how did I not see that? And you might, it's like, not again. How did I not? And when you look back through hindsight, 2020 vision, you go, oh, hang on a minute. The clues were all there. The clues were there the entire time. They really were. The whole time. This person was acting in bizarre ways. But you turned a blind eye to it. Why? Because you weren't ready to face the truth. The truth is painful. This is why I say you have to face the pain of the truth rather than the damage of delusion. Because by looking past all these red flags, by looking past these odd behaviors, by looking past the insults and the gaslighting and the invalidation and the manipulation, by looking past all of that, you protect yourself a little bit because it's like, well, everything's fine. You don't have to feel the pain of it. But that causes immense damage on the inside. You are better off facing the pain of the truth and see it for what it is at the time, in the moment. Because if you see that in the moment, you will save yourself years of turmoil down the line. So taking that, we have the massive highs and massive lows. It's freedom, but also how did I not see it? Then you're going to doubt yourself, like, God, how do I, like, man, how do I move forwards like this? Can I even trust my own intuition? Can I trust my own radar? We got a lot of learning to do. A lot of understanding needs to start happening. A lot of healing, a lot of growth needs to take place there. But it's so often that we then adopt this kind of narrative, egoic stance of good riddance to bad rubbish, right? I hate that person, I hate that individual, and I'm angry, and then often we get resentful in these very subtle ways. So, and you see this all the time, and this is a very difficult subject to speak on, but it's very prevalent in the modern world, where, let's say, to use the example, let's say it was me, like I said, I've never been married, but if it was me, and my wife had cheated on me, and then I realised, oh, she's a covert narcissist, how did I not see it before? It would be very easy for me to fall into the position of saying, well, all women are like that. You know, it would be easy, that would be, can you see what's happening there? Can you see the egoic protection that would give me in that scenario? If I just said, well, they're all like that. They all do that. Can you see how I would be deluding myself into a little self-protection there? Well, that's just how they are. Right? Because then I don't have to face up to the fact that, well, I didn't see it. I should have seen it sooner. And I don't have to face up to the fact that I was hurt. I got hurt. We never want to admit it to ourselves. So it's easier to go up into the head and create a narrative of, well, all women are like that. They all do that. Okay, right? We all know, we all see examples of that, right? It happens the other way as well, very often. where a woman might be hurt by a man and fall into the resentful narrative of, well, all men are like that. All men are pigs. All men are dogs. It's just how they are. We have to drop these narratives if we are to move on, because that ultimately, that narrative only damages you. If I just decide, well, they're all like that, that's just how they are, I am then blocking myself off from feeling any kind of connection or intimacy with others. It prevents me from accessing a life that I could live. I would rather just face the painful truth. And the painful truth in that scenario is, damn, how did I not see that? How did I not see that individual was the way that they were? That's it. How did I not see it? I'm facing that and going, okay, right, okay, I see, I get it. I messed up. I let a demon in. Whoops a donkeys. And then you got to say, well, how did that actually happen? Well, she was very attractive. So it's not difficult to see how that happened, did it? I wasn't thinking with my head. I was thinking with a different organ. And then if I accept the truth of that, it's a bit more like, okay, well, yeah, we see how this happens. But that just happened in that one incident. That's what happened in this scenario. And they're not all like that. And maybe I'll be a bit more wise and discerning when I'm choosing a partner in future. And that's it. There we go. Done. No angry narratives, no resentment, not even any regret, just lesson learned. We're moving on, right? But this is the point I want to get to here. You still have to grieve, which seems very paradoxical, because let's say you found that this person wasn't right for you all along. They hurt you, they did things in ways that they shouldn't have done. And you want to hide in a kind of cognitive narrative of, well, good riddance to bad rubbish. I didn't like them anyway. That's classic. But actually, if we're honest with ourselves, again, bringing it back into self-honesty, if we're truly honest with ourselves, we have to say, well, actually, I miss what I thought it was. You miss the promise of what that relationship could have been. I miss the idea I had of that person. I understand the narrative was based on lies. I understand it was based on delusion. I understand it was based on fantasy, but it was a nice one while it lasted, and I miss it. Just self-honesty. Just open yourself up to the full brunt of that, the full pain of that. That sucks. I miss what it could have been. You get this strange paradox where at the same time you're still angry at somebody and you miss them. How is that possible? Well, it is possible. Because emotion does not work in the realm of logic. Emotion does not exist in the realm of the rational, my brother. The realm of the rational, my sister. Emotion exists in the realm of emotion. It has a life of its own. And yes, you can be angry with someone and miss them at the same time. How? I don't know. I don't have a Scooby-Doo how that's possible, but it is possible. And actually, it's surprisingly healthy to recognize that you are angry and you miss someone. You have to recognize that what you are grieving, so you have to go through this process of grief. If you have found that it's very difficult to move on from a certain thing, a certain event, search around your inner world, your inner emotional world, and search out Is there any grief that I'm refusing to feel? And a way to make that grief a bit more palatable is to really understand that what you are grieving is what you thought it was going to be. You're grieving what you hoped it would be. You're grieving the idea you had of that person. The grief that I'm speaking on here, obviously that seems quite specific to the relationships sort of thing. But grief is also necessary if somebody has, if there's been something awful that's happened to you in the past and you're trying to move on from that, finding some kind of peace with it, find some kind of acceptance with it. Try a little grief as well and just grieve for... God, it's tough. Ooh, grieve for the life that you could have had. If that thing had never happened to you. Sorry. That was just a little emotion work on a grief wave there. We just caught one in real time. Grief wave rose up. Emotion work into... Yeah, that's grief. See, if I didn't know the emotion work stuff, that grief wave could have lasted for weeks. Could have resulted in terrible behaviours. Addictive behaviours. But emotion work kicks in right when you need it the most. You have to grieve for the life you could have had, how things could have been if that thing had never happened to you, that awful thing, the terrible thing. It could have just been one thing, on one day, one event, one thing that happened, and if only it hadn't happened. Think of the life that you could have had if that thing hadn't happened, and you have to grieve. Once you've grieved it, that is an acceptance and a letting go, and now you will be free to move into the space of the life that you do have, the life that remains, the life that is here. Through an acceptance of that grief, that things could have been so much different. I have a lot of this, obviously. I spent, between the ages of 18 and 28, I was an alcoholic. And as bad as it gets, right, I'm never going to downplay it and say, well, it wasn't so bad. It was awful, all day drinking, to massive detriment to my health, social life, professional life. I was a mess, a wreck. I'm surprised I survived. By the grace of God, I survived. I mean that. There are some events I should not have survived. I don't know how I did, but hey, here I am. And I'm glad I did, because I'm loving it now. But I have to grieve for the life it could have been. Ages 18 to 28, they're your prime years. Think of everything I missed out on. Now that it's painful as you come into health and healing, because you realise, hang on a minute, there's a lot of people who have had this their whole lives. They've always been on a fairly even keel. They haven't had to deal with mental health disorders. They haven't had to deal with all of this intense emotional distress. A lot of people who were very blessed and fortunate to have loving parents, 2 loving parents, a loving household. There's a lot of very blessed people. And Clarence's parents have a real good marriage. And the very spiritual film 8 Mile, that's a quote from. When you truly accept that the pain of what is, you have to grieve for, wow, okay, so I missed out on a lot. We could say I spent a lot of years in the valley of the shadow of death. I was not well for a very long time, and I have to grieve for the life that it could have been. I will never fully claw back from that. Just 10 years. Those 8 years, 18 to 28, they're pivotal for your emotional healing, for your maturity, emotional development, not healing, your emotional development, emotional maturity, learning how to conduct yourself in relationships and in professional work. And I didn't do any of that. I strayed very, very far from the flock, and it's going to take me the rest of my life to return. And I've had to grieve in order to be functional today, in order to do what I do today. So that's what I would ask you. In your trying to move on from the painful residues of the past, perhaps you're struggling with this idea, you believe you have to forgive someone. You believe you have to forgive them. And you're doing a lot of beating yourself up about the fact that you can't seem to do it. Well, I'm just don't worry about that. Honestly, people have it backwards. Just because everyone's saying something doesn't mean it's true, right? And forgiveness is one of those things that is used as a tool of manipulation. It happens all the time. I know people don't like me saying that. I get in trouble for saying it, but, well, I said it. And you can tell them I said it. Because it's true. Forgiveness is used as a tool of manipulation. Just like gratitude is used as a tool of manipulation. Acceptance is used as a tool of manipulation. Because these are all very convenient things, aren't they? You must forgive me. Really? Because I've been through all that. So if you're struggling to move on from the past, the pain of when other people have done something to you, don't be in a rush to forgive. Just know that forgiveness is a good thing. That's a beautiful place to arrive at. It is. But I believe that forgiveness is a byproduct of healing, not the other way around. Forgiveness doesn't lead to healing. Healing leads to forgiveness. That's the way around it works. So try healing. Forget the forgiveness. Forget the other person. It's too much energy going towards these validating other people's egos. Don't worry about any of that. Just go to your heart. The lesson that the emotion is trying to teach you is in the emotion. It's in your heart. It's already there, right? So just go there. Be open and willing to feel whatever it is that you need to feel. And then the forgiveness will happen naturally by grace. Okay, that's fine. And second is just be willing to grieve. Just be willing to grieve. That's it. I think that's everything I have for you today. Team, thank you so much for listening. If you have got anything out of this talk, don't forget to hit like and subscribe on the way out. And channel memberships are available if you want to gain access to my exclusive guided meditations and talks, and join our Discord chat rooms that are filled with people who are committed to the journey of healing, the journey of awakening, the journey of introspection, deeper understanding about how to heal ourselves, how to heal the world, and how to finally come to that place of true inner peace. Thank you so much for listening today, team. I know I've waffled and gone on a few little different tangents there, but hopefully in all of that there might be a few little bits there that have been useful to take away. I wish you all the very best in your healing. And look, I know I make jokes and speak quite lightly on things, but it's rough. It's rough. I know it is. I can sit here today and speak on these things quite, like, lightheartedly, but I know what it's like to be awake all night in fits of rage and pain. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to just be going along, having your normal everyday life, and just be assaulted by trigger energy from these awful things that have happened. I know what that feels like, so my heart is with you, and never give up. Never give up. Don't just say, well, that's just how it's going to be now. No, that is not the right way. That is not acceptable. Heal. You'd be stunned at what you can heal from. You really will. It may take years, but you can do it. Take care. Be well. And stay present.